Joining me now is former Special Assistant for National Security to President George W. Bush, Michael Allen. Welcome to the National Desk.
Thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Secretary Blinken says at least some of the 10 Americans still unaccounted for are being held by Hamas, who released 2 American hostages today, citing humanitarian reasons. Help us understand a couple things, really. First, why 2 specifically? And do you think Hamas was really just trying to send a message, or could they have gotten something in return, something that we just don't know about yet?
So it's possible that the Hamas could have gotten something in return from us. I think, however, if the particular woman from Illinois here in the United States had some sort of health problems, I'm sure Hamas is thinking they don't want her to die on their watch. She's not good hostage material, they may have concluded. So I think they either could have sent her back as a humanitarian gesture, or in exchange for some sort of relief, be it through the Rafah gate toward Israel, or maybe something else that we'll learn in coming days.
Incredible that they would value her life, but they've been responsible for so many deaths over the past few days.
Exactly.
Right now, though, the Israel Defense Forces are on standby. Their mission is to eliminate Hamas. Meanwhile, there are protests all across the Arab world over an imminent ground invasion, which the IDF acknowledges that could turn into a broader conflict. What would a Middle East war look like today in 2023, and with the very real possibility that the U.S. gets pulled into it?
Well, it could be very dangerous for all involved. I think what we're watching is whether a second front will emerge in Israel's sort of being surrounded by a number of terrorists around the area. First is Hezbollah. They're, of course, in Lebanon. If they were to attack over the northern border into Israel, that would be a very serious threat to the Israelis. I think in the long run, the Israelis would prevail, but you don't want to split your forces, and Hezbollah has a substantial number of rockets which they get from Iran. And that just sort of leads broader to a more regional picture. Iran also controls the Houthi. You saw them yesterday from Yemen beginning to fire missiles at Israel. They were intercepted by U.S. Navy Aegis destroyers. But this just sort of gets to show that all around the region, there's a series of powder kegs that could explode if there's some miscalculation or some strike. For example, the other day when everyone thought that the hospital had been bombed by the Israelis, things got very tense, very dicey around the world.
They sure did. Going with that hypothetical that you gave us there of Israel victory, in a post-Hamas world, would you expect more peace in the Middle East, and perhaps even here in the U.S., less Islamophobia, less anti-Semitism?
Well, I think what we're worried about the most is Israel's safety and their ability to sort of push back on the terrorists that are at their doorstep. But the thing we'll have to deal with in the long run on terrorism, I think, is Iran. Iran is, of course, a state sponsor of terrorism. They control and fund the Houthi, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and of course Hezbollah. They're very dangerous. They use the cash from oil revenues to not only terrorize Israel, but also to thwart the influence of the United States and its allies in the region. So I think we'll have to go after the head of the snake in one way or another. Maybe it's just more aggressive sanctions, put those up against Iran, ensure they don't get a nuclear program, and maybe over time we can get back to the business of normalizing relations in the region so that we can move on to economic growth rather than these tense terrorist exchanges which lead to military provocations.
And this violence in that region has been going on for decades, and it could take decades to fix it. Michael Allen, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.